we are going full on summer produce and utilizing the best of the summer with a roasted tomato sauce over penne with a beautiful burrata. It's one of my favorite things because that's what the oven does all the work with the roasting. We put pasta together, but then we plate this up and it has a large amount of flavor that everyone's gonna be shocked by. So from my Iowa farmhouse kitchen, I'm gonna bring you this dish so you can make it too. Let's go. This summer, I'm utilizing the garden produce, and that doesn't mean you have to grow a garden or have produce right out your back door. It means we're gonna use produce that's in season that you can go to a grocery store or a farmer's market, maybe your CSA box, and make meals that work on a weeknight that can go together quickly, be minimal work, but really full and delicious. And so what a lot of times works well for that is what? Pasta, because pasta is economical. We can keep it in our pantries, it's dried and ready to go, but we wanna add a lot of flavor to that. We wanna make a good sauce. So this is a quick roasted tomato sauce. And today we're utilizing small tomatoes because these are plentiful. If you've ever grown them, they're a little bit like the zucchini of the tomato world in that if you get one, you get a lot of them. And that's a good thing. You wanna use them. And what's great about them is they're sweet, they're full of flavor, even if they're not at peak seasonal time. So that's why I love them. So we're starting with ones that I've washed, let dry. One goes flying, but we will get that one. And what we're gonna do is just put them right here on just a nice big baking sheet, because we're gonna put this right into the oven. We want them to burst. We want them to have their juices come out. That's exactly what's gonna happen. But what we wanna do too is make sure we have flavor to go with it. So I'm starting with some garlic, and what I do is I just smash garlic into big pieces. Now, I'm using a lot of garlic because it's gonna get tempered in the oven for flavor, but what I'm doing, you can see, is just smash into pieces. So how I do that, and I do grow garlic, but I love to use my garlic, but you can use any type, is I take off that root end like that. And then what I do is I just take the side of my knife, hit it, and if you feel uncomfortable doing that, you can use some other tool if you need to. But then what it does is just come out in pieces, and you can see they just come right off of that husk, of that outer stuff you just want to take off. And what the garlic really does is it roasts beautifully, but it really does take on a different flavor, I think, once it's in the oven. And I think we oftentimes forget things like that. So to me, it's one of those beautiful things of a different way to use it, if you can, is just let it roast. And you can roast it obviously in that husk and then squeeze it out. But in this case, I want it to darken and deepen its flavor just like it is. So along with the garlic, I'm just putting there's no perfect way to do this. So don't feel like there is. I'm gonna take some shallots. Now, you could use red onion, but I'm using shallots specifically because shallots have this beautiful ability to be a lighter flavor, a little bit sweeter, and one of my favorites. So what I'm doing is taking off that root end, taking off the stem end, and then just cutting them in half. And I'm gonna leave that skin on because that can add a really nice depth of color. It can also add a nice flavor. So that's why when we get them out, we're gonna just peel that off. But until then, I just wanna leave it and just cut them big and in half. Shallots are something to me that obviously I use in any vinaigrette or dressing I make in the kitchen, but I love to use them for roasting too. So as I cut them off, you can see I'm just placing them, again, no perfect way. If any of the loose pieces come off, that's fine. So I think anytime you make a tomato sauce, you need a little bit of something to kind of spice it up. It doesn't have to be spicy hot or adverse to spice if that's what your thing is. You could leave it out, but I like to take one hot pepper. So I'm going out to my garden, finding one hot pepper. This is a hot chili. And what I'm gonna do is just slice it in a couple big pieces, maybe even lengthwise. Now, if you want to, just add a little bit of red pepper flakes to this. I'm keeping the seeds in. I want that spice. Now, leave it out if you don't want it. I want that in there. After that chili is on there, we're just gonna talk some herbs. So you can use really any conglomeration, but I do have specific order that I like to use them. I'm doing one sprig of rosemary. We can pull it out easily then. I just like to settle it in there. And then some nice amount of thyme, a couple sprigs, kind of here and there. I think they all just work well. Now, I'm not putting basil on yet. I like to do that at the end. It really just gets darkened, and I feel like you get its bright flavor if you add it when you're done, as opposed to let it go through that whole roasting process. Where these are gonna emit their flavors during that roasting and then work into the sauce well. Basil to me is better at the end. It's just something I think really works better. So now that we have all that put together, the big thing is olive oil. We're gonna put a nice dose of olive oil right over all this. One, it's gonna add obviously a richness, but anything roasts better when there's a little bit of olive oil. Instead of just burning, it roasts and it gives it even immensely more flavor. So to make it a really good sauce, you need that olive oil. And of course, the second thing anytime you roast something, salt. I always use kosher salt. And you want a nice dose of salt to really balance out the flavors, bring out more flavor. And remember, if we cook at home, you almost 100% will always have less salt than anytime you eat out or eat processed food. It's really hard to have too much salt in your diet if you're eating and cooking at home. It's an important thing to remember. So salt is what's going to bring out this flavor and make it be so delicious and bring out those natural flavors. Now that's all done, we're going to put it in the oven and we're going to let the oven do the work. We're not going to sit and just be married to the stove. Instead, we're going to let this roast until it's ready. We'll have the pasta cooking and we'll be ready to go. I just drained the pasta after I pulled out the tomatoes. So in the last few minutes, I always try to get the pasta cooking. But what I made sure to do, and this is pivotal, I saved pasta water. You want that because pasta water, the reason we use it with sauce, it has starch in it from the pasta. So it's gonna actually help bind the sauce, thicken it, and it's a nice way to get the right consistency and texture. So I'm gonna set that there, and now we can focus back on these. So they roasted. I'm gonna take out some of the big sprigs like rosemary and the thyme, which is a really simple thing to take out once it roasts. But what I also wanna do is show you, on these onions, remember I said, look at that, just peels off. And you get all that beautiful color on the onion. That's what I want, is that beautiful color, because that's flavor. So we're gonna take those off. And let me show you too, how well things actually roast. So if we look at the garlic, it looks like a piece, but look, it just smashes, which means it's gonna be sweet. That's what we want. That's what we have here. I can touch this. I have asbestos hands. We're gonna put it all right back into this. This is what the stock pot is what I cook the noodles in, which is what I want. So any of that residual oil, any of the tomatoes, any of those juices we wanna put in here, because this is now gonna be our sauce. So you see how simple this is? We let the oven do the work. We cooked pasta, that's easy. And so now what we're gonna do is make sure to get any of those drippings and just add a very minimal couple things to it. So to this, we're gonna add a very small amount of butter. Butter just really, to me, balances out the sauce. Especially with the acidity, I think there's something with that butter that really adds something special. And then we're gonna start with some of the pasta water that we can add more to. And then we're just gonna work on blending this together. And the reason you don't add all pasta water right away is because sometimes tomatoes have different levels of liquid, natural water in them. So you wanna make sure you don't need it all. So what we're gonna do is just blend it with immersion blender. You can do this with a canister blender too, until it's a sauce. I turn on its side just so it all gets in my immersion blender. Now remember, if you're gonna do this with a canister blender, countertop blender, anything that's warm or hot has steam, so you don't wanna seal that lid. Keep it a little bit ajar, put a towel over it to make sure it doesn't splatter, but you need to let the steam escape, or you could blow up, and you don't wanna do that. So what I have here is you can see a sauce, and it will change the colors depending on the type of tomatoes you use, but it's beautiful. Always at this point, I just wanna always try things as you're going. That's good. A little bit more salt. Because tomatoes, they're all gonna change, and you can do this with larger tomatoes and chunk them up, but all that will change the seasoning. So what I wanna do is bring this back to a simmer. And just because it's been sitting there a little bit, I wanna put it at a simmer, and then we're gonna let that pasta go in since I cooked it al dente. Finish up in here. We're gonna add one final component and finish it. I let the sauce come up to a simmer, added the pasta, let it cook for a minute or two, just so it really starts absorbing that sauce. But look at the beautiful consistency and how it clings to the pasta. That's what you want. And it has just a hint of spice, which I love from that chili I put in. You don't have to do that, but why not? I just think that's really good. So now we can just plate it up, or we can put it into a big serving bowl, which is my favorite way. And look at how beautiful it is. I think there's nothing better than using some of the best of the season, something that just has so much flavor and just beauty to it. And look how simple it really was. And I think that's what we need to remember. Good food can be simple. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. It doesn't have to have a long list of ingredients. Now, what I do want to do to finish this up is I have a ball of burrata. Now, burrata is usually sold by the mozzarella in a grocery store. But what's great about it is it has kind of a beautiful secret that what I love is you put it right in the middle of something like this when you're serving it. And you take something that you just want to open it up with, or just let your serving spoon do it. But in the center, it is super creamy. Do you see all that? And it will just melt and fall into this. And as people are grabbing the amount they want, or they're getting served, you can grab moments of that, and it will become this creamy beauty right in the middle of it. Once that's in there, you're ready to go. So you can serve it up however you want. Now, I do think when you serve it up, the one important part, I'm just gonna try some here, is to take some fresh basil. And I think it needs to be fresh at the end. Just tear some basil over whatever you're serving, because that's when you're gonna get the freshness of that basil. And I think that's super important. That's gonna maintain its fresh, bright quality. That's when basil is at its best. And then you can just enjoy it all. Okay. You can't fully understand the sweetness a tomato has until they are roasted, condensed in flavor, and then used like this. That roasted tomato, it comes out so beautifully. Of course, that basil sings on top. And now once I mix all the burrata in, you will start getting this creaminess, but I want you to see it on top because this is how you're gonna serve it and how beautiful it is. This is one of my favorite dishes because it utilizes summer produce. It utilizes things that are quick, easy, pantry staples, few ingredients, high impact on flavor. That's the point. Don't be scared of food. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So share this recipe around, share this video around so others can see this is possible. Invite people over, invite your friends, your family, make good food like this. Everyone will be impressed, and you can either tell them how easy it was or you don't have to. Check my website, wiseguyed.com, for this recipe and all my other recipes. And until then, bring people together with food. That's really gonna make the world a better place.